My name is Abigail Cooper. I'm 74 years old now, sitting on my porch in Austin, watching the Texas sunset paint the sky with colors that still remind me of blood and fire. Some memories don't fade, no matter how many decades pass. The wooden swing beneath me creaks with the same rhythm as our old farmhouse door used to. That sound still sends shivers down my spine. We lived in Mercy Creek, a speck on the map about 40 miles from Amarillo. Our house was small, 3 bedrooms, peeling white paint, and a yard where my mother Patricia tried to grow roses despite the unforgiving Texas heat. She was beautiful once, before the bruises became permanent fixtures on her skin. Before continuing with my story, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you are watching from. Your help is very important. My father, James Cooper, worked at the local refinery. To the town, he was charming, quick with a joke at the general store. At home, he was a storm that never passed. His boots on the porch steps were the sound of approaching thunder. Emma was 7 when everything changed. My sweet little sister with her corn silk hair and gap-toothed smile. She used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, her small body trembling against mine. "Tell me a story, Abby," she'd whisper, and I'd spin tales of brave princesses who saved themselves. I was 12, old enough to understand the shadows in our home, but too young to name them properly. I knew my father's hands left marks. I knew my mother's eyes held a distance that grew with each passing month. I knew to keep Emma close when Dad came home smelling like whiskey. "Abigail," my mother said one night after he'd passed out in his chair. "You watch out for your sister, you hear me?" Her voice was soft but urgent. I nodded, not understanding then what she already suspected. It was 1963. The world was changing fast. President Kennedy was alive, and the Beatles were just becoming famous. But in our little house, time moved differently. We measured it in bruises that faded from purple to yellow, in my mother's quiet tears as she washed dishes, in the growing silence of my once chattering sister. I didn't know yet what courage meant. I couldn't imagine the weight of the choices that would soon fall on my young shoulders. I was just a girl who loved her mother and sister, who feared her father, who dreamed of a life beyond Mercy Creek. If I close my eyes now, I can smell the dust and honeysuckle of that summer. The last summer before I learned that monsters aren't just in fairy tales. The summer before I found out what my father was doing to Emma when I wasn't there to protect her. I first noticed the change in Emma during early summer. She stopped playing with her dolls, stopped singing those little songs she made up. She flinched at sudden movements and avoided being alone with Dad at all costs. One afternoon, I found her hiding in our bedroom closet, knees pulled to her chest. "Em, what are you doing in here?" I asked, crouching down. Her eyes were wide, unfocused. "Hiding," she whispered. "From what?" She just shook her head, tears welling up. "Don't tell Daddy where I am, Abby. Please." That night I stayed awake, listening. Our house was never silent, the walls too thin, the Texas wind too persistent. When Dad's bedroom door creaked open around midnight, I held my breath. His footsteps paused outside our bedroom door, and I clutched my blanket, heart hammering. The knob turned slowly. I pretended to be asleep as he entered. Through slitted eyes, I watched him approach Emma's bed. He whispered something I couldn't hear, then lifted her like she weighed nothing. She didn't struggle, just went limp in his arms as he carried her out. My stomach twisted with fear and confusion. I waited until their footsteps faded, then slipped out of bed. The floorboards were warm under my bare feet as I crept down the hall. From the partly open door of his study, I heard Emma's muffled crying. What I saw through that crack changed everything. My father's hand over Emma's mouth, her nightgown pushed up, her eyes staring at the ceiling. Something in me broke and hardened at the same time. I backed away, trembling so hard I feared my bones would break. In the bathroom, I vomited until there was nothing left but bile. When Emma returned to our room an hour later, she climbed into her bed without a word, curled away from me. The next morning at breakfast, Dad ruffled Emma's hair as he passed. "My good girl," he said. She stared at her untouched scrambled eggs, shoulders hunched. Mom gave her a worried glance but said nothing. That afternoon, I waited until Dad left for work, then found Mom hanging laundry in the backyard. "Mama," I said, my voice barely audible above the snapping sheets. "We need to leave. We need to take Emma and go." Her hands stilled on a damp shirt. She didn't look surprised. "What did you see?" she asked, her voice hollow. "Dad, he's hurting Emma. At night, the way he shouldn't." A single tear rolled down her cheek, but her face hardened. "I was afraid of that." She pinned the shirt with more force than necessary. "But where would we go, Abigail? With what money? Your father would find us. We have to try," I pleaded. "Emma's disappearing." Mom looked at me then, really looked at me. "You're right," she said finally. "We'll figure something out. But we have to be careful. If he suspects..." She didn't need to finish. We both knew what James Cooper was capable of. For 2 weeks, we prepared in secret. Mom started hiding small amounts of money from the grocery budget. $1 here, 50 cents there, tucked into an old Bible she kept on her nightstand. I packed a small bag with our essential clothes and hid it under a loose floorboard in our closet. Emma didn't know. She'd retreated so far into herself that sometimes I'd find her staring at the wall, thumb in her mouth like she'd reverted to infancy. I'd sit beside her, brushing her tangled hair, whispering about the future. "We're going to live somewhere with trees," I'd tell her. "Somewhere Dad can't find us. You can go to a new school, make new friends." She rarely responded, but sometimes she'd lean against me, seeking comfort she couldn't ask for in words. Dad was growing suspicious. He'd come home earlier than usual, his eyes narrowing when conversations stopped abruptly. One night, he dumped Mom's purse onto the kitchen table. "You hiding something from me, Patricia?" he demanded, rifling through her belongings. Mom's face remained calm, though her hands trembled as she stirred beans on the stove. "Just looking for my shopping list, James. What's got you so riled up?" He slapped her then, hard enough that she stumbled against the counter. Emma and I sat frozen at the table, our eyes down. "Don't you lie to me," he growled. "Mrs. Barton at the store says you've been buying less groceries, but I ain't seeing the change in my wallet." "Prices went up," Mom said, touching her reddening cheek. "I've been careful with what we have." He seemed to accept this, or at least lost interest in pursuing it further. But that night he took Emma again, and I lay awake listening to her muffled cries, my nails digging half-moons into my palms. The next morning, Emma was gone. Her bed was empty, the covers thrown back. Mom and I searched the house frantically while Dad was in the shower. "Maybe she ran away," I whispered, panic rising in my throat. Mom shook her head, her face ashen. "She wouldn't go without us. He must have..." She couldn't finish. Dad came downstairs, whistling. When he noticed our expressions, he frowned. "What's wrong with you two?" "Emma's missing," Mom said, her voice surprisingly steady. Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or concern that his secret might be discovered. "She's probably just playing outside. That girl's always wandering off." He grabbed his lunch pail. "She'll turn up." After he left, Mom and I searched everywhere. The shed, the fields behind our house, even the old drainage ditch where kids sometimes played. No Emma. She returned the next day, walking up the driveway as if she'd just been for a stroll. Her dress was dirty, her feet bare, her eyes emptier than before. "Emma!" I ran to her, gathering her in my arms. "Where were you? We were so worried." She didn't speak, just allowed herself to be led into the house. Mom bathed her, checked her for injuries, tried to get her to eat. Emma complied mechanically, but would not say a word about where she'd been. That night, Mom came to our room after Dad fell asleep. "We're leaving tomorrow," she whispered. "During dinner. I can't wait any longer." The next day moved with excruciating slowness. Every creak of the house, every distant car engine made me jump. Mom moved around the kitchen with deliberate calmness, preparing Dad's favorite dinner, pot roast with potatoes and carrots. "Act normal," she kept reminding me when Dad wasn't looking. "Don't give him any reason to suspect." Emma sat on the porch steps all afternoon, a rag doll clutched to her chest, staring at nothing. I joined her, my arm around her thin shoulders. "We're leaving tonight," I whispered. "You, me, and Mom. We're going somewhere safe." She didn't respond, but her small hand crept into mine and squeezed. The sun was setting when Dad's truck rumbled up the driveway. He came in, smelling of oil and cigarettes, and grunted his approval at the dinner waiting on the table. Mom poured him a glass of whiskey, something she only did when trying to placate him. "Girls, wash up for dinner," she called, her voice artificially bright. We sat around the table, the tension so thick I could barely breathe. Dad talked about work, complained about his boss, oblivious to our silent terror. Mom nodded in all the right places, refilled his glass twice. The plan was simple. Mom would create a distraction. Emma and I would slip out the back door and run to the road, where we'd follow it to town. We'd find Nancy Moore, the sister of our neighbor, who'd once quietly offered help when she saw Mom's bruised wrist. Halfway through dinner, Mom stood to refill the water pitcher. As she passed behind Dad, she deliberately stumbled, sending the pitcher crashing to the floor. Water splashed across his boots. "Damn it, Patricia!" he shouted, jumping up. In that moment of chaos, Mom's eyes met mine. "Now!" I grabbed Emma's hand and pulled her from her chair. We slipped through the kitchen as Dad berated Mom, his back to us. The screen door made a soft squeak as we pushed through it. "Run!" I whispered to Emma, pulling her across the yard. We were halfway to the road when I heard a crash from inside, followed by Mom's scream. Emma froze, looking back. "We can't," I said, though it tore me apart. "Mom's giving us time. We have to go now." Tears streamed down Emma's face as I dragged her forward. We ran along the darkening road, dust kicking up around our ankles, the sound of our breathing harsh in the quiet evening. It took nearly an hour to reach town, our pace slowing as Emma's strength flagged. I carried her the last quarter mile, my arms burning with the effort. Nancy Moore's house was at the edge of town, a small yellow bungalow with geraniums in the window boxes. I pounded on the door, praying she was home. When it opened, the light from inside momentarily blinded me. "Lord have mercy," Nancy gasped, taking in our disheveled appearance. "Abigail Cooper. What on earth—" "Please," I said, Emma limp in my arms. "We need help. My dad. He'll kill us if he finds us." Without another word, she ushered us inside, locked the door, and drew the curtains. Nancy Moore's house smelled of cinnamon and coffee. She settled us at her kitchen table, placed milk and cookies before us, then stepped into the next room to make a phone call. I could hear her urgent whispers, but couldn't make out the words. Emma hadn't spoken since we arrived. She sipped her milk mechanically, her eyes darting to the windows at every sound. I kept my arm around her, whispering that we were safe now, that Dad couldn't find us here. When Nancy returned, her face was grim but determined. "I've called Sister Agnes at St. Mary's Convent," she said. "They take in girls who need help. You'll be safe there until we figure out what to do about your situation." "But our Mom," I said, tears welling up. "She's still there with him. He was so angry." Nancy knelt before me, her hands warm on mine. "We'll send Sheriff Collins to check on your mother first thing tomorrow. But tonight, you girls need rest." She made up a bed for us in her spare room, a real bed with clean sheets that smelled of sunshine. Emma fell asleep almost instantly, exhaustion finally claiming her. I lay awake beside her, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a house that didn't hold fear in its walls. The next morning, Nancy drove us to St. Mary's, a red brick building on the outskirts of town. Sister Agnes met us at the door, a tall woman with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "You're safe here," she told us, leading us through corridors filled with the sound of girls laughing and talking. "No one will harm you while you're under our roof." The convent housed 12 other girls, all with stories of their own. Some had been abandoned, others removed from dangerous homes. They welcomed us with curious glances but asked no questions. Emma was assigned a bed in a dormitory with the younger girls. I was put with the older ones, separated for the first time in our lives. That first night, I snuck into her room after lights out, finding her curled into a tight ball beneath her blankets. "I'm here," I whispered, stroking her hair. "I won't let anyone hurt you again." She looked up at me, and for the first time since that terrible night, she spoke. "Where's Mama?" she asked, her voice raspy from disuse. I swallowed hard. "She'll come when she can," I promised, praying it was true. Days passed with no word from our mother. Sheriff Collins had gone to our house, Sister Agnes informed me, but found it empty. No sign of Mom or Dad. The uncertainty was unbearable. After a week, I made a decision. I had to know what happened to Mom. While the nuns were busy with evening prayers, I slipped out a side door and began the long walk back to Mercy Creek. The Texas night was warm, stars scattered across the black sky like diamond dust. I walked for hours, fear and determination driving me forward. As our house came into view, I approached cautiously, staying hidden among the trees at the edge of the property. The house was dark, the truck gone from the driveway. I was about to move closer when I heard movement behind me. Spinning around, I came face to face with my mother. Mom looked like a ghost in the moonlight, her face gaunt, a dark bruise circling one eye. But she was alive. A sob escaped me as I threw myself into her arms. "Abigail," she whispered, holding me tight. "My brave girl. You shouldn't have come back." We huddled together beneath the trees, speaking in whispers. Mom explained that after we escaped, Dad had beaten her badly, demanding to know where we'd gone. She'd genuinely not known, which was the only thing that saved her. "He left yesterday," she said. "Went to Amarillo looking for us. I've been hiding in the Johnsons' abandoned barn, waiting for a chance to get to town. Emma's safe," I told her. "She's at St. Mary's Convent with me. The nuns are taking care of us." Relief washed over her face. "Thank God," she breathed. "Is she talking again?" "A little," I said. "She asked about you." Mom wiped away tears. "We need to go now, before he comes back." We had just started down the road when headlights appeared in the distance. Mom grabbed my arm, pulling me into the ditch beside the road. We pressed ourselves into the tall grass as Dad's truck rumbled past. "He's back early," Mom whispered, her voice tight with fear. "Must not have found anything in Amarillo." We waited until the truck disappeared around the bend, then continued toward town, keeping to the fields rather than the road. The night was quiet except for the chirp of crickets and our careful footsteps through the grass. "I'm going to get you girls somewhere far away from here," Mom said as we walked. "My cousin in Dallas said we can stay with her until I find work." Hope flickered in my chest. "We'll be a family again?" Mom squeezed my hand. "Yes, baby. A real family." We were about a mile from town when we heard the truck again, coming back down the road. This time it was moving slowly, the beam of a flashlight sweeping the ditches. "He's looking for me," Mom whispered. "He must have seen I was gone." We froze, crouching low in the grass. The truck crawled past our hiding spot, then stopped about 50 yards ahead. The door opened, and Dad stepped out, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. "Patricia!" he called, his voice carrying in the still night. "I know you're out here. You think you can leave me? Take my daughters?" Mom's grip on my hand tightened painfully. "Run for town," she whispered in my ear. "I'll lead him away." "No," I protested, "not without you." "Listen to me," she said fiercely. "Emma needs one of us. I can handle your father. Go back to the convent and stay there until I come for you." Before I could argue further, she stood up and called out, "I'm here, James. Just me. The girls aren't with me." Dad whirled around, the flashlight finding her. "You lying bitch," he snarled, stalking toward her. Mom took off running in the opposite direction from town. Dad pursued her, shouting obscenities. I remained frozen for a moment, then did as she'd ordered. Ran toward town, toward safety, my heart breaking with every step away from her. I reached St. Mary's just as dawn was breaking, slipping back inside through the same door I'd used to leave. Emma was waiting in my bed, her eyes wide with fear. "You left," she accused, her voice small. I gathered her into my arms. "I found Mom," I whispered. "She's alive. She's coming for us soon." 3 days passed with no word from Mom. I grew increasingly anxious, imagining the worst. Sister Agnes noticed my distress and called me into her office. "Sheriff Collins called this morning," she said gently. "Your mother is in the hospital, in Amarillo." My heart seemed to stop. Will she? "She's alive," Sister Agnes assured me. "But she's been hurt badly. The sheriff wants to speak with you. He's waiting in the parlor." Sheriff Collins was a big man with a weathered face and sad eyes. He removed his hat when I entered, turning it in his hands awkwardly. "Your mama's a fighter," he said. "Doctor says she'll pull through." "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely audible. The sheriff hesitated, glancing at Sister Agnes. "Your father caught up to her that night. Beat her something awful, but she managed to get away. Stabbed him with a kitchen knife she'd been carrying." My eyes widened. Gentle, soft-spoken, Mom had fought back. "Is he?" I couldn't finish the question. "He's alive," the sheriff said, a note of disappointment in his voice. "Wound wasn't deep enough, but he's hurting, and that gave your mama time to get to a farmhouse down the road. They called an ambulance." "Can I see her?" I asked. "Tomorrow," Sister Agnes answered. "Sheriff Collins will drive you and Emma to the hospital." That night I told Emma everything, that Mom was hurt but alive, that she'd fought back against Dad, that we would see her tomorrow. Emma listened silently, then asked, "Is Daddy coming for us?" "No," I said firmly. "He can't hurt us anymore." The drive to Amarillo the next day was tense. Emma sat between me and Sister Agnes in the back seat, clutching her rag doll. The sheriff kept glancing at us in the rearview mirror, his expression troubled. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and flowers. Mom was in a small private room, her face swollen and bruised, her right arm in a cast. When she saw us, she tried to smile, though it clearly caused her pain. "My girls," she whispered, reaching out her good hand. Emma hung back, uncertain, but I rushed to Mom's side, carefully embracing her. "I was so scared," I admitted, tears flowing freely. "I know, baby," she soothed, "but we're all together now." Eventually, Emma approached, climbing carefully onto the bed beside Mom. For the first time in weeks, I saw something like peace on my sister's face as she nestled against our mother's side. Sheriff Collins and Sister Agnes left us alone for a while, then returned with serious expressions. "Patricia," the sheriff said, "it's time to make a decision. I can't ignore what James did anymore. Too many people know now." Mom looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm willing to arrest him," the sheriff said, "for what he did to you and the girls. But I need you to press charges." The room fell silent. In 1963, Texas, men like my father rarely faced consequences for what they did behind closed doors. Everyone knew it happened, but no one spoke of it. Mom looked at Emma, then at me. I saw the moment her fear gave way to determination. "Yes," she said quietly. "I'll do it. For my girls." The weeks that followed were a blur of hospital rooms, police stations, and hushed conversations that stopped when Emma or I entered the room. Mom's injuries healed slowly, but her resolve never wavered. The day Sheriff Collins arrested Dad, the news spread through Mercy Creek like wildfire. Some folks took Dad's side, claiming Mom was making up stories. Others brought casseroles to the hospital and whispered words of support. Emma and I continued living at St. Mary's while Mom recovered. She visited whenever she could, always bringing small gifts, hair ribbons, penny candy, books to read together. One afternoon, Sister Agnes called me to her office. Mom was there, along with a woman in a neat suit, who introduced herself as Ms. Winters from the district attorney's office. "Abigail," Ms. Winters said gently, "we need to talk about your father's trial." My stomach clenched. "Will I have to see him?" "No," Mom said quickly. "I won't allow that." Ms. Winters nodded. "But we do need your testimony, Abigail. Your statement about what you saw your father doing to Emma." The thought of speaking about that night made me physically ill, but I straightened my shoulders. "I'll do it, if it keeps him away from us." "And Emma?" Ms. Winters asked. Mom's face hardened. "Absolutely not. She's 7 years old and she's barely speaking again. I won't put her through that." Ms. Winters didn't argue. "Your testimony should be enough, Mrs. Cooper," along with Abigail's, and the medical evidence. The day of the trial arrived with a thunderstorm that matched my mood. Mom dressed me in my Sunday best, a blue dress with white collar, my hair tied back with a ribbon. We left Emma at St. Mary's with Sister Agnes. The courthouse was an imposing building in Amarillo, its marble floors echoing with footsteps. People stared as we walked by, whispers following in our wake. Miss Winters met us at the door to the courtroom. "Remember," she told me, "just tell the truth exactly as you remember it. Don't look at your father if you don't want to." But when I took the stand, I found myself staring directly at him. He looked smaller somehow, his arrogance diminished by the handcuffs and prison jumpsuit. When our eyes met, he looked away first. I told my story in a clear voice that surprised even me, about the night I saw him take Emma, what I witnessed through the door, how Emma changed afterward. The courtroom was silent except for my voice and the scratch of the court reporter's pencil. When I finished, the judge, an older man with steel-gray hair, thanked me. As I stepped down, I caught a glimpse of Mom, tears streaming down her face, her head held high. I wasn't there for the verdict. Miss Winters thought it best I returned to St. Mary's. But that evening, Mom arrived with news. Dad had been sentenced to 15 years in prison. "He can't hurt us anymore," she said, gathering Emma and me into her arms. "We're free." With Dad in prison, we left Mercy Creek behind. Mom's cousin in Dallas offered us her garage apartment, while Mom found work as a secretary at an insurance company. It wasn't much. 2 tiny bedrooms, a kitchenette, and a bathroom with a leaky faucet. But it was ours, and it was safe. Emma started at a new school that fall. The first day, she clung to my hand at the bus stop, her face pale with anxiety. "What if they don't like me?" she whispered. "They will," I assured her. "And if they don't, it doesn't matter. You've got me and Mom." Slowly, life found a new rhythm. Mom worked long hours but was always home for dinner. We ate together at our small table talking about our days. Emma began to smile again, to laugh. Sometimes she would still wake with nightmares, crawling into my bed for comfort. But those nights became less frequent. I started high school, made new friends who knew nothing of our past. I joined the newspaper club, discovered I had a talent for writing. Mom saved every article I wrote, even the small ones about school lunch menus or football games. At Christmas, we decorated a tiny tree with homemade ornaments and strings of popcorn. Mom splurged on gifts, a diary with a lock for me, a doll with real hair for Emma. As we sat surrounded by crumpled wrapping paper, Mom raised her hot chocolate in a toast. "To new beginnings," she said, her eyes bright. The years passed. I graduated high school, earned a scholarship to the University of Texas. Emma blossomed into a confident young woman, her childhood trauma visible only in small ways. A startle at unexpected noises, a preference for sleeping with a light on. Mom never remarried, though she had opportunities. "I've had enough of men to last a lifetime," she would joke, but I knew the truth was deeper. The scars Dad left weren't just physical. When I was 22, we received word that Dad had died in prison, a heart attack in the exercise yard. Mom received the news with a blank face, then went about preparing dinner as if nothing had happened. That night, I found her on the back porch, staring at the stars, tears streaming down her face. "Are you crying for him?" I asked, sitting beside her. She shook her head. "For the life we might have had if he'd been different, for the years we lost to fear." I put my arm around her shoulders. "We made a good life anyway," I said. She smiled through her tears. "Yes, we did. Thanks to you, Abigail. My brave girl who saved us all. It's been over 50 years since we fled that house in Mercy Creek. Mom passed away a decade ago, peaceful in her sleep after a full life. Emma lives in Houston with her husband and 3 children. She became a child psychologist, turning her pain into purpose. And me, I became a writer, telling stories of resilience and courage. I married a kind man who understood my past and never raised his voice or hand in anger. We had 2 daughters who grew up knowing only safety and love. Sometimes I still dream of that night we ran through the dark Texas fields, terror at our heels. I wake gasping, momentarily 12 years old again. But then reality returns. I'm 74, in my home, the monsters of my childhood long vanquished. What I've learned in all these years is that fear doesn't disappear overnight. It fades gradually, like a photograph left in the sun. Some days it's barely visible. Other days, a shadow catches you unaware and brings it all rushing back. But I've also learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's what you do despite the fear. Mom showed me that when she faced down Dad to give us time to escape. I showed Emma when I pulled her through that dark night, toward safety. Once a year I visit Mercy Creek. Our old house is gone now, demolished to make way for a convenience store. I stand in the parking lot, remembering the girl I was, the terror that defined my childhood. Then I drive to the cemetery where Mom is buried. I bring yellow roses, her favorite, and tell her about Emma's children, about my grandkids, about the beautiful, ordinary lives we've built from the wreckage she helped us escape. "We did it, Mom," I whisper to her headstone. "We're no longer afraid." On my darkest days, when memories press too close, I remind myself of this truth. Some people are broken by trauma, but others are forged by it, made stronger at the mended places. My family, the women of it at least, were the latter kind. This is the story I needed to tell before my time ends. Not just of survival, but of what comes after, of how you rebuild a life from broken pieces, of how you learn to trust again, to love again, to believe in safety again. I am Abigail Cooper. I was a terrified girl who found her courage in the Texas darkness. I am a survivor, and I am no longer afraid. If my story has touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need to hear these words of hope. Subscribe to my channel for more true stories of survival and triumph over life's darkest moments. Remember, sometimes the bravest thing we can do is tell our truth. Leave a comment below with your thoughts, or share your own journey of courage. Together, we create a community where silence gives way to healing. Click the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter in our collective journey toward freedom from fear.